Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. We unfold the meaning of Tathagata's truth.
Gotcha. Ungan, we'll hand the speaker over to you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome Ungan Bill Mayhew with a big gasha.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hojo, are you going to have some words for an introduction?
Sure. Pretty soon you're going to be the person who needs no introduction. You have so many introductions. Ungan Bill Mayhew has, it'll be very interesting, his story this morning. The wayfinding talk is a traditional talk given in all Zen centers, as far as I know, it goes back in time, where a candidate for priesthood talks about how he or she got into Zen in the first place, what was going on in their life, and so forth, what's happened since, why they keep coming back like a bad penny. And
Thanks.
And what Zen means to them today. I don't mean to be giving any spoiler alerts here, but Ungan's history of practicing Renzi as well as Soto will be interesting, I'm sure, to some of us. And there will be plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. So hopefully you'll thoroughly enjoy this today. Welcome, Ungan.
Thank you, Hojo. Welcome, everybody. When I was asked to do this talk, a wayfinding talk, I kept calling it my coming out talk. But then I was told I shouldn't use those words. I wasn't really excited about doing this. I've always been a little reserved in life. But anyway, once I got into it, it's really been interesting to stop and look back at your life and sort of systematically think about what has happened in it that's significant and has led you to, or in this case, led me to where I am today in my path. You know, trying to figure out why you're where you are it gets back into karma. And I guess we could spend the whole hour talking about karma. It's so terribly complicated that there's no way you can really come to definitive decisions, conclusions, but at least you can identify the some big things that have happened. So what I'd like to do this morning, first I say hello to Sam. At least I got one of my Jacksonville people online. And Lindy over there, she was on the Newcomers Wednesday night. It's nice to see you. And John is here in person. John Michael, this is his first time in person here, so it's nice to see some new faces around. And Ray, I've got your name down pretty good by now. I'm going to start out at age 55. That was a big time in my life. But also, as we go through this, if you have questions along the way, please ask them. Don't wait till the end. I'd like to keep it as informal as I can and as informative.
I'm sure it's on everybody's mind, so not much happened until 55.
Well, not much I remember. I drank so much. But, so at 55, I'd been messing around and worried about things and dabbling, read a few little things about Zen. And then a neighbor of mine who knew about as much about Zen as I did gave me a book. It was a Price and Wong edition of the Diamond Sutra and Platform Sutra. The Diamond Sutra is in the front of it, and I got about halfway through that, and I started to throw the book away and quit. It just made no sense at all. But I pressed on and read the Platform Sutra, and for whatever reason, an accumulation of things. It was so meaningful, it has almost brought tears to my eyes. I still can't explain it, but it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling and got me started on my Zen path. So let's do a little back up here and how did I get to be 55? Childhood, I was raised in a very conservative Southern Presbyterian family. Very conservative. I won't go into that, but it was very conservative. And by the time I was a teenager, I don't remember exactly, maybe 13, I completely rejected monotheistic religions. Just didn't make any sense. And so that was my childhood exposure to spirituality. Teenage years, after I had lost my church and my religion, it was just typical teenage, busy, busy, busy. Had a part-time job, I had a car, had a girlfriend, going to high school. Pretty much stayed away from anything other than myself for my teen years. So finally I get into college, Davidson College. I don't know if you're familiar with Davidson or not. If you're not, you ought to Google it. It was a pretty special place. Back when I went, it was an all-male private. I think we had 1,000 students, but a very rigorous academic school. It was also a Presbyterian school, but at least the Bible courses we were required to take, it had a little more liberal approach to what religion is than what I had learned growing up. Still didn't mean enough to me to change my mind about religion, though. And a couple philosophy courses broadened my horizons on different things in the world, different ways of looking at things. And so about this time, while I'm still in college, there were some pretty tough things happened in my life. My mom and dad split. That was a biggie in my family. My mom was very, very conservative, and it's just something beyond my belief that I could accept almost. And at the same time, my high school girlfriend dumped me. I still hadn't gotten over that.
You won't tell your wife. You won't tell your wife.
Well, I've already told her. So those were hard times, mentally hard times. But part of my time at Davidson, we were required to take the ROTC program, the first 2 years anyway. Then I went ahead and took the last 2. I think they paid us $29 a month. And at that time in my student poverty, that was pretty good pay. So I went into advanced ROTC. When I graduated, commissioned second lieutenant in the infantry. You know what the infantry's mission statement was back in those years? To close with and kill or capture the enemy by any means available. That deserves a bow. That's something that's pretty tough to actually look at in your life, to when you say, well, my job is to kill people, the enemy, whoever they are. Anyway, I was assigned to the 7th Infantry Division and shipped off to Korea for 13 months. This is another one of those karmic events that I have no explanation for, other than there was some really, really special affinity to the Korean people and the Eastern way of life. Maybe I was a Korean monk in a prior life or something. I don't know, but there was something there that was very, very special. While I was there, the war and it was a war, I don't care what they call it, but had only been over not many years. There were no trees on the mountains, poverty. As I recall, the per capita income at that time was 200 won per year in Korea. There were 270 won in $1. I just never known poverty like that. You grow up and you think you know some poor people. Most of Korea at that time was subsistence living, true suffering. I hadn't been there 3 weeks, and we had a flood. Every time it rained, it flooded because there were no trees. And the little village outside our camp, Tandushan, was flooded, and I was sent down with a platoon of men to assist pull bodies out of the river. Oh. Anyway, that's when you really find out what true suffering's about and what poverty's about. And that's never left my memory either. But anyway, also one little thing, while I was there, I got involved in an orphanage that happened to be sponsored by the Presbyterian Church. But anyway, I fell in love with these little Korean kids, and I would go down and spend time with them. So anyway, moving along, after I get out of service, I come back home, get a job, and I'll speed along between age 25 and 55. I worked, smoked cigarettes, drank a lot, worked for this guy that was just real, I don't know how to put it any other way, he's just a real jerk. It was a throwback to the 40s and 50s, a carrot and stick motivational method. But I was very successful business-wise. But part of that stress from that relationship, I started smoking cigarettes again. I had quit 40 or 50 times. But anyway, I went down and took this smoking cessation program at a hospital that sponsored it there. And we looked at all these pictures of deteriorating lungs and all that bad. The good thing, they introduced me to meditation, not Zen meditation, but just listening to tapes and sitting quietly. In retrospect, that was a pretty important thing because I tucked that away back in my mind somewhere. But during this period of financial success, there were more hard times. Excuse me. My first marriage failed. I went through a period where my dad, my brother, and my nephew, that is 3 generations of Mayhew men, senior, junior, and the third, all died within 23 months. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry, excuse me. Anyway, that's a lot of bad stuff going on. You lose your religion, you lose your family, you drink too much, you see your dad and die. But it all wasn't bad. I don't want to make it sound bad. There's a good side to all this too. During this time, losing religion, I guess, is bad, but losing is also good. Seeing all this change in life, the impermanence really hits home with it. You finally start figuring out what impermanence is. And like that time in Korea, I really found out what dukkha was. I never heard the word dukkha and didn't recognize it at the time, but that's what it was. I started meditation. the whole searching process. In retrospect, all this negative stuff was very important. I don't. It's good for you to go through trials and tribulations. It certainly aimed me towards Zen. Very important. Educationally, I had learned some pretty big words, existentialism and agnosticism, so I could impress all my friends that now I'm an agnostic. I'm still very much agnostic. I think Buddhism is very much agnostic. We don't know the answers. We don't pretend to have the answers. We have faith that Buddha's path can help, but we don't know the answers. Or maybe Hojo does. I haven't. He won't tell me what they are, though. Got a new wife.
42.
Got a new wife. We've been married 35 years, so I'm beginning to think this one might last. And the good stuff, again, the business success, and I put a question mark by that. At least I've been financially able to do pretty much what I wanted to do in retirement. So it's like every bad thing has a silver lining some way, but sometimes you don't see them. Maybe when you get as old as I am and you start looking back at what happened, even my high school girlfriend dumping me, that's, in retrospect, that was probably a good thing. We had pretty much been devoted to each other and hadn't gone out with other people, so it was probably good that happened. I guess I still worry about it. Anyway, that brings me back up to age 55, where we started. So what's happened? Any questions at this point? You're supposed to ask a question.
Yeah, so you're like the one.
we talked this talk a couple days ago, and I have some questions built up. I got to save for later.
Okay. More questions later. Okay, age 50.
I got one.
We got one.
When you were going through trials and tribulations in this period, did you relate to them as growth, or were you despairing about them?
I was able to hide from them almost completely through drinking and work and travel and playing tennis and all the other stuff you do. But no, I did not face up to any of it. It was not, at the time, I had no recognition that it was a growth experience or potential growth experience. It was pain and suffering, and stayed drink enough for long enough. Hojo says if we sit long enough, if you drink enough, it'll finally get to you too.
Yeah, right.
If it helps any, my first high school girlfriend dumped me too. And the second high school girlfriend probably should have, but didn't.
Doesn't help a bit. Misery does not love company. Okay, so my buddy gave me the Platform Sutra, and at age 55, I didn't know whether to continue working or retire. I had to get out of the environment I was in. No, this guy I was working for was just more than I could handle. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
So the gentleman that gave you the Platform Sutra, was it random or like?
No, he was a neighbor, but he didn't know anything about Zen. I don't know where he got the book.
Okay.
Yeah, just happenstance. You look back and say really important things in life happen, and there's no damn reason for it. I mean, it just I'm sure there are. If you take that chain of cause and effect, the karma behind him giving me that book, there's a meaning there, but I don't know what it was. Yeah, I was going to give one more shot at this guy I work for. I don't call his name, so I'd bring agents in. I had agents all over the United States, and we'd go up at his big office, which is about 3 times as big as this Zendo, and invariably, he would introduce himself, and Well, it says, when I finished my undergraduate work at Mercer University, one semester, and he dropped out and never been in a graduate school, but he did not lie. Anyway, I got a whole bunch more. If somebody wants to come down and take me to lunch, I'll be happy to tell you some more stories. But anyway, I decided to retire, so I retired. And I'd read this book and gotten really clicked my interest. So I Googled, and sure enough, there was Jacksonville Zen Sangha. Not Jacksonville Soto Zen, but Jacksonville Zen. Zenrin Lewis was the practice leader there. And so I called him up and started sitting at the Unitarian Church where we are today. Completely different organization. Zenrin's still there, but he has a place separate, completely away. Anyway, Zenrin was a student of Edo Roshi at Daibazatsu Zendo up in New York, a Renzi, very traditional Renzi monastery. And so I'll tell another little side story here.
You're good. You're good, Tom.
I'd been sitting for about 3 months. I saw Lindy suffering over here a little bit this morning beside me after 3 minutes. I'd been sitting for about 3 months, and good old macho me, I decided, well, I'm going to go up to that monastery with Zenrin. So the monasteries in the Catskills, upstate New York, is just a beautiful place. So Zenrin and I go up there, and I'm trying to sit. By Wednesday, the third day, I called the Jiki Jitsu in that night, and I said, call me a cab. I'm going back to Florida. To hell with this stuff. This place is like 20 miles up in the mountains. There's no way to get there unless somebody drives you. But I was serious. Call me a cab. Well, anyway, he explained I didn't have to sit cross-legged. I was trying to do a quarter lotus that I could use seiza, or I could use a bench, or if worse came to worse, I could always get in a chair. But so I struggled through. I made it through that first week. Edo Roshi accepted me as a student. I was in the last class of new students that he ever accepted. And it was a very, very special relationship, even though I didn't get to see him but once a year.
And Ungan, can you, just for the sake of folks that may not know the difference between Soto Zen and Renzi, can you speak a little bit of what the differences are?
Yeah, there's not as much difference as most people think. I think we've grossly oversimplified it in today's world where everything has to be yes and no and simple, quick. It's Soto does shikantaza. That's just sitting. Renzi do koans. Well, there's some truth there. The Renzi people do concentrate more on koans, and the Soto concentrates more on shikantaza. Edo Roshi, the way he taught us was that koan practice was preliminary to shikantaza. Koan practice teaches you to control your mind, to focus your mind on this illogical saying, and through learning to concentrate, focus your mind, then you're ready to sit in shikantaza. I also found Dogen was trained by a Renzi guy. When Dogen went to China, he studied with Renzi people. One of his teachers in China was Ungan, my Dharma name. Dogen wrote a book on koans. 2 weeks from now, I'm in my Shuso ceremony, is it? I've got to be questioned about a koan. So Roger had a great thing when I said, Renzi and koan says, we're all trying to get up the same mountain. There's Renzi guys who are trying to run straight up the side of the hill. and the Soto people are taking it easy going round and round. My exposure also at that monastery in New York, they had probably 8 or 10 resident monks there, and 7 or 8 of them were young guys from New York City, rabid Yankees. And it was certainly a different style. But the Jikijitsu was from Atlanta. Big guy, I've forgotten his name. Is that the biggest difference I can see, besides this emphasis on koans and non-koans, is that when you're doing kinhin, that's a walking meditation, the Renzi folks walk rapidly, whereas the Soto people go so slow. That's been a big adjustment to me. There was one Yasutani Roshi, I believe, one of the famous Roshis combined them. He would do his first lap walking quickly, and then he would slow down to Soto style. So it's all mixed up. I think a lot depends upon the man, the Roshi, the Hojo. If he wants to combine the two, he's free to do that. If he wants to be one way or the other, these Roshis are pretty powerful people. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Edo Roshi, he got kicked out of his, he founded that place back in 1975. It was big, successful. They had a big downtown New York City center. He couldn't stay away from his women students, and he got kicked out. One of the little side story here, they were supposedly having their board of directors meeting to vote on this, and they get around to this one lady who is a rock of the board, and so, how do you vote? And she says, I abstain. And everybody looked and said, why would you abstain? She says, hell, I've been having an affair with him for years. Anyway, it was hard for me to travel to New York, and then his personal problems. And in the meantime, I had a friend that had moved to North Carolina and became active in the North Carolina Zen Center with Gente Sandy Stewart, and I transferred my allegiance up to Sandy Stewart. Sandy had been practicing since age 18 with Joshu Suzaki Roshi. He was over 100 years old when I met him, still having problems chasing women. 100 years old. I didn't know whether to hate him or love him. Sandy didn't have students. He would not accept anybody as a student. He says, I'll work with anybody, I'll talk to anybody, but you're not my student. I don't want any responsibility. That's your job. He would never use his Zen name. He was Sandy to everybody. Anyway, he was a very, very special guy. And I practiced,
For clarity, Sawaki was 100 years old, not Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Sawaki was 100 years old.
Yeah, Sawaki was 100 years. No, Sandy's just about our age, probably not as old as us old folks, but I forgot where I was. Anyway, Sandy, very, very special man. He got kicked out of his place. His wife had donated the land. He was the originator. He had done everything. Very successful, but not because of women. Thank goodness.
It's
On
been
the other
tried
hand,
here twice, and it's not because of women either.
well, I don't want this to sound sexist, but as I understand the situation, he was so successful, they had attracted some pretty powerful people to their board, including some pretty powerful women. And these women wanted his Zen Center to become more socially active. They wanted to start joining the protest and do it. And Sandy said, no, I'm a traditional Renzi priest, and that's not going to change while I'm here. They kicked him out. He started a new place up there now. He's back in business, and he's online right now. I haven't done. Anyway, that was.
I did want to interject. This is a major issue that many people see Zen, and particularly Soto Zen, as being liberal, ideologically progressive, and so forth. And there's a lot of conflict within boards of directors as to how engaged we should be in the social political activities out there. It's a difficult problem.
So, how's my time
good.
holding
You're
out?
good.
Still doing pretty good.
You're doing good.
So, I wrote the board up there a pretty strong letter explaining to them I drove to North Carolina from Florida not to see their Zendo or to be in protest, but to deal with Sandy Stewart. And without Sandy, they could. I'm not going to tell you what I told them they could do. I said I would not be back and there'd be no more contributions. Thank them anyway. So here I am back again. Now I'm up to, I'm early 70s now. All this is, I haven't given you my ages, and don't you ask me about them. So I decided to give Zenrin another try. And so I went back to the North Carolina, to the Jacksonville Zen Center, and Zenrin and I never had a karmic affinity. We had, quite frankly, never gotten along well. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Like, again, I know some of us have come from other sanghas that have had some challenges with, improprieties. After when you were transitioning from one sangha to another, did that impact the way you practice or your thoughts about things as you were working through your different sanghas? When your original Edo Roshi had challenges and you chose to leave, did that change your practice or your relationship with your practice at all?
Oh yes. Your practice, I think, adapts very quickly to your new teacher. Mm-hmm. So certain parts of it, emptiness is emptiness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But procedurally, you adapt to the new sangha you're with. We did things differently in North Carolina than we did in New York. And now that I'm here, we do things differently. Mm-hmm. Not that they're better or worse, they're just different, and you adapt. Mm-hmm. Because all that form isn't really all that important anyway. Mm-hmm. It's Zazen. It's mm-hmm. you and your sitting and mm-hmm. what's going on in your mind. Mm-hmm. One of the first things they taught us up at DBZ was, as when you go in, they take all the beginners and you have this almost class, and they'd say, well, we got all these rules you got to follow. If you'll just go ahead and fall in line and learn the rules, it will free you up to spend your time, your mental time, concerned about your practice and not about rules. And I've always used that as a pretty good guide. So I try to do things here like the Soto people do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's hard. Okay, so I'm now, I go back and try Zenrin again. Zenrin was a math professor, PhD, taught at Purdue University, turned Zen monk. Really difficult for me anyway. It was a difficult relationship. So I started looking around, I Googled again, and lo and behold, there is the Jacksonville Soto Zen Meditation Group, Inc. Can't believe Roger gave it such a name, at the Unitarian Church. Well, I had started out 25 years ago with Zenrin. So back to the Unitarian Church. And Roger and his lovely wife, Dorothy Merrill, had started that Sangha. It was very small, just beginning to grow, but had some core of 2 or 3 real good people in it. And I really enjoyed that relationship. Out of that, I met Hojo. He came down for one of our Zazen Shin's all-day programs, Zazen Kai. And I signed up did a new Jukai with this group and signed up as a, what do you call it, a student of yours? You call it a
Disciple.
disciple, yeah. And then, lo and behold, Roger, I wish Roger was online this morning. I'd like to talk about him. Getsu, he just got his black robe last week. And his wife moved back to Atlanta and left Jacksonville. When he left our Sangha down there, he took every Zabaton, every Zafu, every article on our little,
Okay.
he took everything. He left us with nothing. But that worked out all right too. We sent an email out to everybody, and I think that we had nothing left and we needed money to buy stuff, and within 24 hours I had $700 or $800 pledged, which worked out well. So we got all new stuff when Roger left. Okay, now I'm 75 years old. Roger leaves, and sort of by default, I became the practice leader down there. I had, quite frankly, avoided a formal relationship after having gone through Ada Roshi, the North Carolina board, Zenrin. About the last thing I wanted to do was to get into the formal side of practice. But here again, for no special reason, while Dorothy got a big job up here, and suddenly and that started me on the path. That was age 76, I guess. Age 77, I got my black robe. And I'm 79, and here I am now.
Gotcha.
Plenty of time,
You got
folks.
plenty of time. And again, folks, I'm going to throw up the screen just so Ungan can see actually who is in the gallery there. But again,
Hi, Amy. Amy and I are having lunch Friday.
yeah. So at this time, we're going to open the floor up, both in the Zendo and online. If you have questions, comments, please come off of mute, raise your hand. We welcome questions, comments, and again, this is an opportunity to ask Ungan questions.
There's Paul Baker, too. Paul, I'm waiting for you to get well.
There's John.
You're muted.
Yep, soon. I'll talk to you this week.
So since I know Suki, you've been waiting with bated breath to ask any additional questions, I'm going to throw the ball to you initially since you were picked on first. So I'll just pick right back on you. So
This is a softball because I asked you this the other day. But the Platform Sutra to me seems like an interesting text to start your practice with. What was it about the Platform Sutra that enticed you so much to be part of this practice?
Suki, ask that question more times.
One
So
moment, I'm
Who's got another question? You know, I read that 25 years ago. You expect me to tell you what was in it? I don't know, but whatever it was really made an impression on me.
I also know you still have that same copy from
I do.
however many years ago, and you've read it multiple times
I do.
about the Platform Sutra.
Just the whole concept of Zen, the emptiness, the meditation, the impermanence, all the basic characteristics of life, the Buddha's approach being more scientific. Here's a path to follow that's based upon observation and experience, not on some kind of book that's been passed down from a burning bush or something. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be sarcastic about such things, but anyway, I was just, everything about it just made sense to me.
I would wager that the fact that he did not have a teacher was the most appealing thing to you.
That's true. That's true. He got chased out into the mountains for years. They had to hide out because he made everybody so mad. His number one guy at the place where he started, well, after he caught him, he actually became a student. But does that make any sense? Amy, surely you got a question.
I do. I would like to hear about, I agree with the fact that most of the things that are significant that happen in our lives happen kind of by accident, right? And here you are in this position at the Jacksonville Center, where by accident you have ended up becoming the practice leader as well as gone on the priest path. So I guess I'd like to hear more about your thoughts, your feelings, your lived experience of coming upon these sort of happenstance moments in Jacksonville, where now here you are. Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that now, sitting here after so many years?
Now that sounds like a good question from a psychotherapist. What are my feelings? What were my feelings? It was a matter of practicality and necessity more than anything else. I really enjoyed the group down there. Some great folks. My feelings, and I was retired. I didn't really have enough to keep me busy. I used to play a lot of tennis, but my back had gotten a little shaky, so I'd given my tennis up, and so I was sort of looking for something to do, and here was an opportunity, and I enjoy teaching anyway. That's the way I met Sam. I actually teach a course over at the University of North Florida in their OLLI program, not an academic course, but Sam was one of my students. And if you want an interesting experience, you get Sam to be a student. He's a retired Jewish lawyer, and he can ask some humdinger questions. Did that answer you at all, Amy? My feelings were, at first, my ego got involved. I said, hot damn, I'm the leader. I'm big stuff now. And I had to work my way through that. We lost some people probably because of my ego. I can make all kinds of excuses for it, but we gained a lot more than we lost, though. Now, don't get me wrong, but I really enjoyed it. Now, becoming more involved with the STO, I'm working my way through that. It's trying, to put it. I'm not used to having any oversight. When I took over from Roger down there, we saw Hojo once a year, and that was about it until I became a disciple. Then I still talk to him every week, every Tuesday morning, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But it comes and goes, and it's going to change, and so there were some ups and downs. And
You might explain briefly what STO is, because some people may not know.
STO is a organization founded by Elliston Roshi that's called the Silent Thunder Order. And it's an affiliation of Zen locations around the United States. I think there's a couple in Canada. I guess the stated purpose of the STO is to be a service organization to help the sanghas grow. That's supposed to be, and you know, every organization, particularly new ones, as they grow, you have trials and stuff that you have to go through, and some people want to make more rules and regulations, and some of us don't want any rules and regulations, and somewhere in the middle, hopefully we'll find a happy balance someday.
That's brief enough.
Is that it? Okay. Moving right along.
Yeah, John. Thanks, Muman.
Hey, John. You're muted, John.
That's the way we like him.
Thank you. I've found your story to be quite interesting. So thank you for that. You touched on something that's very alive with me at the moment. You mentioned Sandy Stewart got kicked out because a liberal board of directors wanted that center to be much more engaged in the community, possibly involved in protest. Hojo commented on that, and he said that's one of the difficult challenges that Soto deals with, being seen as liberal, this idea of engagement. I'm processing and wrestling this bipolar urge to quietly experience life as opposed to stepping up into the community, drawing a line and saying, this doesn't happen here, and I stand quietly by. I want it to change. Could you or Hojo or anyone else comment on how you've dealt with that bipolar activity, that bipolar energy that comes up?
Thank you, John. That's a great question. We face this in our group in Jacksonville. We have a couple folks that think we ought to be a lot more active. I encourage people to be active, but not as part of our Sangha meetings or anything. Our Sangha meetings is a place of refuge, a place to get away from all that crap in life, of all the monkey mind and problems and stuff. Now, outside that, go join a group. There's all kinds of groups that, you know, the church where we sit is very active in such things. And I tell people, if you want to do that, go get with the church. You can do both. You can come to our meetings and sit in silent meditation and try to find out who you are. But as long as I have anything to say about it, we're not going to turn this Sangha into a politically active organization. But again, I support you completely in your effort to do so. I lost one member in particular over that, my focus on that. He actually got some way attained our email list and sent out this email, and I called his hand on it very bluntly. I said that was improper, you shouldn't have done that. And he was a school teacher. Can't trust those school teachers anymore. Anyway, he got mad and left. But yeah, so my answer is you can do both. It's not an either or. You can come to the Zendo Monday nights or Sunday morning, and you can sit and practice and work on yourself. The general feeling I've heard Hojo express, is that the first thing you need to straighten out in the world is yourself before you go out trying to save the rest of the world. And that you'll be a lot more effective out in the rest of the world if you got your own head on straight.
let me add to that quickly. This comes up all the time. Matsuoka Roshi was asked this back in probably 70s or 80s. And he would say, he would take the Zazen posture and say, this is the most you can do, when he was asked about engaged Buddhism. And what he meant by that was exactly what Ungan was saying, is that if you're not okay with your own existence, your own mortality, your own, follies and foibles and so forth, if you get straight with yourself on the cushion, if you don't, then you're likely to be the blind leading the blind, making things worse. And Thich Nhat Hanh was another exponent of this. He said, to work for world peace, you have to be world peace. You can't have a dog in the hunt, you can't take sides, and so forth. So Zen asks us to do the hardest thing to do, which is to embrace both sides. Thich Nhat Hanh even said, you can have empathy and compassion for the victim of rape. Can you have the same compassion for the rapist? So it's a difficult charge, a difficult challenge. But my view of it is what we're doing is radical politically. We're actually allowing people to train themselves to be independent thinkers and to be interdependent actors. But it's not our place to tell them how they carry that out. And we certainly don't want to represent Zen as a group or as a movement, another movement, as being in favor of this issue du jour, or this one, because that takes away from the very centrality of what the power of Zen. The power of Zen is for the individual to undergo revolution. And by ripple effect, we may have world peace eventually, but not from a top-down solution.
Thank you, Hojo. I might add a little coincidence here. While he was talking about Thich Nhat Hanh, I wrote down on my notepad, being peace, Thich Nhat Hanh. If you all don't know, Thich Nhat Hanh was like the father of activism in Buddhism, Zen. From Vietnam. He was not just some little lowly priest out in some little small. This guy had a PhD in philosophy or something, But in his book, Being Peace, and if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it to everybody in here. He makes a big point that when you're protesting against something, you protest against policies and procedures, not against people. If you start protesting against people, you just divide yourself further and create conflict. So protest away, but protest policies and procedures, not personalities. How's that, John? That help?
That helps. Thank you.
Good luck.
Let me pause. Quick check in with folks in the Zendo. Any thoughts, questions?
I saw Sam's hand flurrying around over there, so we have to.
Oh no, Sam. Oh
Sam
no.
and Tyson. Yep, Sam and Tyson. Go ahead, Sam.
There's something I wanted to, I wanted to raise something with you, Bill, but if I could just make a comment on just thoughts that I've had regarding the social protest that has just been talked about. And I noted, the necessity to get this balance, get this inner peace, as well as concern about what's outside socially. And I know there is a tendency, I find myself, and I see sometimes in others, where maybe throw yourself too fervently into outside activities to change things as partially a way to really avoid and addressing the weaknesses and deficiencies inside. And that's something to be cognizant of as the individual. But as far as the question to you, Bill, you know, it relates to your actions as the Sangha's practice leader. You know, every week, every Monday, that seventh day, you show up at the Sangha, and you know, in your role as the practice leader, it's important that you convey and radiate a certain high level of inspiration to others. You may not want to have that role, but you do as a practice leader. You do have an important essential role in the atmosphere and in the spirituality of the other members. And I will say that you do an admirable job of keeping a high level. Sometimes you're obviously more inspired or more enthused than other times, but you always keep at least a good level. I mean, there got to be times Monday comes around. Not every Monday can start off and be an inspirational day for you, and yet, you're called in. Others look to you. How do you maintain, or how do you, perhaps on some of the more lower days, how do you maintain that level of inspiration, that level of the positive outlook that's we in the Sangha are able to get the advantage of and inspiration from, because some days can't be as good as others for you.
Sam, if I was there, I'd give you a hug. How do you stay inspired? Sometimes I don't feel like it, quite frankly, but that's my job. You know, it's. I believe in what I'm teaching. I believe the Buddha's path is the best thing we've discovered so far, anyway. As he said, try what I teach, and if you don't like it, try something else. So I truly believe in the basic teachings, the impermanence, non-self, and the stressful nature of life. And I add a fourth to those three basic characteristics, that being our delusional nature, not clinically, Amy, don't worry, I'm not talking about clinical delusions, but just not seeing life as it really is. And I guess I've been in leadership roles long enough, starting out as a second lieutenant in the Army. You know what the most dangerous thing in the Army is? It's a second lieutenant with a map and a compass. We don't know anything when we go in, you know. But anyway, it's your job. But if you're going to be a leader, it's your job to and sometimes, yeah, I have to pinch myself and almost come to tears when my expectations are not met. Hojo tries to tell me, he said, don't worry about how many people show up. You know, you can't control that. Well, that's easy to say, but everybody's got an ego, and sure, I count heads, but I try not to. I try to keep it in perspective. I try not to get attached to that. But that's my job, Sam. I do thank you very much for your kind comments. Again, give yourself a hug and say it's from me.
Some stand-up comics said success is 80% of showing up is 80% of success.
I do have a comment for Ungan. Our reluctant teacher and leader. I like the fact that you didn't go in wanting that. I I want to be the teacher. I want to be the leader. And I do love the fact that you kind of checked yourself. I'm like, my ego got a hold of me. So I like the fact that you kind of are doing a self check. But the other thing that I have to say, based on what Sam said, is that for all the teachers and people that hold the space for the Sangha, it's like I read it. I think Uchiyama said this, Sensei, you have to help me here, about essentially the teacher is basically like a locomotive. You know, like when you stand really close to a train, y'all are holding the space, and just by showing up and just holding the space and leading in the practice, by default, your students and the people get benefit of that. So I just had to say that it's very appreciated that you continue to show up, and you're willing to, even though reluctantly, like, oh, there's nobody but me. You were willing to take on the role and to be able to hold the space and hold the Sangha together. So we're also grateful to all of our teachers that continue to be the locomotive for us in our practices. So
Thank you. Thank you. I'll give you a hug after the meeting's over.
Joe had
I
something.
changed my mind, Sensei. It was a question full of words, and I decided it wasn't worth saying that.
Can you give us a question of no words?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Lindy, newcomers can ask questions.
Now I'm on the spot.
See, that's you.
to do
Here
that.
comes the spotlight.
Calling you out. First impressions. Important.
Oh, I loved hearing your story, and I really loved you sharing with us the parts that were tender, the parts of your life that caused suffering, and recognizing my vast suffering after only 3 minutes of sitting. And I think the question might be is when is my stamina going to build? But that's probably a question to myself.
Now, when I started out sitting, right after I read the book, I said, I've sat in a chair. And I said, well, I'm going to sit 5 minutes a day the first week. And the second week, I'm going to sit 10 minutes a day. And the third week, 15. And by the end of the month, I'll be sitting 20 minutes a day. First day, I sat 8 or 9 minutes. Second day, I got on the floor. I'd read a book about pillows, and I went like almost 15 minutes. The third day, I was doing my goal of 20 minutes. I said, hell, there's nothing to this. I love it. There are physical exercises you can do to stretch the tendons and sinews of your body to make it a lot more comfortable, which if you're going to get into sitting, I would urge you and everyone to do. Just lay on your back and pull your knees up to your chest to stretch your back. Pull your legs apart, grab your ankles and pull them in towards you to, anyway, go see sign up for a health course somewhere if you don't know how. Or actually, I've got my whole program from Brooks Rehab Center. If anyone would like to see it, I could share that.
Just don't give up.
And one of the things that Ungan mentioned is what our teacher Hojo Sensei says a lot, and we'll hopefully be having a T-shirt that says this too. But just sit still enough, long enough, but keep coming back to it. Just keep coming back to it. So we encourage you and support you. So if you keep showing up here, we'll help you out with that.
Yeah, in person we can do posture correction, and we have some other things we can.
And I see David Ray. I see him on Facebook. I'm so excited to see him actually in the Zoom meeting. If David or Jeremy, anyone else have any questions or comments out there?
Alisa.
Yeah, Elisa too. Yes. Thanks, Jeremy. Jeremy says, thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, David had said he might try to come up this weekend for the sewing class, but
Which has been rescheduled.
It's been rescheduled, David, if you haven't heard.
Shikaku, I thought you had something earlier. Did you?
Oh, he's good.
Okay.
Well, that's a surprising change.
So,
It's all in love, Shikaku.
closing verse.
Yeah, let me just a few things before we close. Again, Ungan, thank you so much as always for sharing your journey, your wisdom, and we look forward to continuing to support you along the way and along the path. We love you, and we'll continue to support you on that. I did want to
Thank you. Thank you.
also put some merit out there. We have a Sangha member, Buddy Corbin, whose family is going through a challenging situation with his 25-year-old son. So please send some energy and support to Buddy Corbin, and again consider dedicating your merit to your practice for Buddy and his family through his time. Hey David, it's good to see your face there. Um, as always, after this today, we actually have a meet and greet. So if folks are new and you want to stay, we're going to keep it online too as well. Again, it's just really just after the beginners, we just have to offer a space for people to be able to ask questions. We'll actually show you pictures of some of the people that you'll see, like Hojo Sensei, learn a little bit about him and his, and how the Zendo came to be, and just a little bit about the leaders and how you can get involved. So please stay around for that if you are welcome to do so. Again, we continuously have practice opportunities every single day. Again, Ungan, he's doing our ancestor talk next week. Is it Ikendashi? So Ungan will be talking about Ikendashi, our ancestor, next week. So please do come to join. And as always, we are so grateful for those people that are consistent givers that continue to support our Sangha and our work and our teacher. So if you haven't done that, please consider doing so. Again, without any further ado, Hojo or Ungan, is any other comments or questions there?
David,
Yes.
hands up.
What date will be your seshu, or when you go home, your last ceremony?
It's the last Sunday of the month, the 28th,
26th, I believe.
25th.
The fourth Sunday of this month.
25th, the Sunday, the 25th.
2 weeks. In 2 weeks?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
And again,
Thanks.
Ungan will be on the website. The koan that he's going to be taking question on is listed out there. So if you would like to research and listen and read that beforehand, come with questions. Again, that's an opportunity to be able to ask Ungan questions.
Can you
I
tell
mean,
me
we could drill him.
Yeah, the
what koan you selected?
koan is Muman Khan number 29, Huining's Flapping Flag. So now you can Google that and ask. I've already Googled it, so I'm ready to answer all the Google questions.
Yeah, so please do join us as well. So
Yeah, everybody asks Ungan questions about that koan, or really about anything else about Zen, and he has to answer them. He can't refuse.
yeah, he'll be ready.
That's the answer.
Hojo Sensei, anything else?
No, just read the book, The Original Frontier. Read it. Write a review. We're almost at 35 now.
Awesome. So without further ado, we will do our closing Dharma verses. And Suki, thank you so much for ringing the bells for us. All right.
Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Gosh, everyone, have a gosh, so everyone have a safe week. And again, those who would like to stay for the meet and greet, please just stay online. We'll just take a moment to get transitioned. Again, gosh, so everyone, have a great week.
You should be Kokyo.